Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the channel, we have a look at the prototype version of Grimcoven. And this is the newest game that will be hitting crowdfunding soon from Awaken Realms. And in the description below, there will be a link to the crowdfunding site. Now, no money was exchanged for this preview coverage. As a matter of fact, Awaken Realms didn't even offer to pay for this coverage, and I never take any kind of money for preview or review coverage. So I agreed to look at this prototype because of that, and because I thought the game sounded pretty interesting. Now, if you take a look at this box and your first thought is Bloodborne, you would be 100% correct. This is about as close to a Bloodborne board game that there can be without it actually being called Bloodborne. In a game of Grimcoven, the players will be playing as hunters, and they are going out into this kind of Victorian, kind of steampunky, weird world, and they will be fighting bosses. This is another entry into the growing subgenre of games where the focus is on boss battling. And there will be a different number of bosses available. And this is not a campaign game. This is a scenario game where you will be playing through different scenarios. I imagine you could play through them in different orders, and you just set up the game and have a complete one and done, zero to hero experience. And so that is another reason why I did want to take a look at this game. Now, this is a prototype version, and Awaken Realms was very clear that they want me to be as honest as possible. So some of my criticisms that you will hear in this video might be just because this is a prototype. Things will change, but this is a very beautiful prototype. And for those of you who are into minis, we will be taking a look at the prototype minis in closer detail as we go through this video. Okay, so I think we'll do kind of a brief overview of the game, and we'll talk about some of the components in detail as we do that. And then after we do that, I will go into some of my thoughts, pluses and minuses, and finish up the video with kind of the important thing in these kinds of videos is, will I be backing it? At least important for me. So let's talk in general about the game. So this game is a one and done. So that means zero to hero, no campaign. You just set up a scenario and play, and it is a boss battler. And the players will be playing as certain hunters. We have a gunslinger here, and we also have a hunter called the Duality, and we have a hunter called the Technomancer. And each one of these hunters plays very differently. There will be more hunters available in the full game. And then you also have a hunter board here where you will place your hunter card, and then you will keep track of things like their basic actions, their corruption level, which is kind of like their XP, which will allow you to unlock more abilities as you play. You can keep track of their defense and their wounds and statuses. Now, as you collect experience, and the experience in this game is called Lament, it's kind of like the blood echoes in Bloodborne. When you get up to this corrupted side, you will actually flip your player card over, and you will become the corrupted version of that hunter. Now, that corruption version is a little bit more powerful. They have access to more powerful abilities. However, they also will spread corruption around the game and do bad things as the game continues to play. So there is kind of a tug of war, a push and pull with that system. And I think that is pretty cool. Let's take a look at the hunter minis right now. So these are the prototype minis. Now, because this is an Awaken Realms game, you will know that this thing will be overproduced. And so not only do you get your main mini for your main hunter, but when they become the corrupted version, you will replace them with the corrupted mini. Now, what's really cool is at the beginning of the game, when you select your boss that you are fighting, this prototype comes with two bosses, the Convergence, which here is the Convergence mini. Pretty much kind of a version of the one reborn from Bloodborne. And then we also get the Undead General, and this guy looks pretty cool here. So here is the Undead General mini. So I know for a lot of people really like minis. I'm not really a big mini guy, so the minis aren't a big selling point for me, but they are very nice. And again, these are only in the prototype form, so I imagine the actual minis will even look better. But as you can see here, there is also the ability to fight the corrupted hunters as bosses. So I think that is pretty cool. So we have our corrupted duality, our corrupted gunslinger, and our corrupted technomancer. And so let's take a look at the other minis as well. So here we have the technomancer. So that is their normal mini. And then we also have their corrupted version. Let me grab the corrupted version. Okay, and then there is the corrupted version. And we have duality all the way up here. So duality here is the normal mini. And then here is the corrupted version. So as you can see, there's a pretty big change here between the normal and corrupted in this version, and that's pretty cool. So you will pick your hunters, you will pick your boss, and then you will set up the boss map according to a scenario book. And it looks like there might be some light legacy style elements to this game, because as you can see here, the convergence is considered the first scenario. And then it says, from now on, you can play scenario 1. From now on, you can play scenario 2. From now on, you can play scenario 22. So it sounds like as you start battling certain bosses, there will be things to unlock. So that might be kind of cool as well. So you will be moving out on this board. When you set up the board, there are some random elements that you will set up, and those are represented by these cards here and these other minis, such as a carriage here, or a well, or maybe this pile of skulls. So there will be random elements that you draw cards from, and you will set those up. So every time you play the same scenario, there will be differences to that, and I think that is pretty cool. But the base game will have you fighting a boss, and you will also fight some minions. And there are a number of different minions that you will fight against as well. And the prototype here comes with 2 different minions. So at the beginning of the game, you will choose one of these minions at random to fight against. And then there will also be these elite minions. And these are kind of like mini bosses. And this promo here only comes with one of the elite minions, and that is the alchemist. And this guy kind of throws these alchemical bombs at you and causes the hunters to burn. This guy is a real pain in the ass. But so you will also have these minions, or these elite minions. So you'll be fighting a boss, an elite, and a number of minions. And you win the game if you can kill the boss before any one of your hunters dies. And that's kind of the basic game. It's pretty simple. It's pretty direct. It's pretty straightforward, but there is a lot going on. This is an Awaken Realms game. So rest assured, there are a lot of fiddly bits. There are a lot of little things to keep track of. Let's take a closer look at one of the hunters, and we'll kind of go into detail about how the game is played from the hunter level. Okay, so here is my hunter board for my main hunter, and that is the gunslinger. Now, this game is fully playable solo, and you do that by picking one hunter, and you'll play the full version of that hunter. And then you pick another hunter to be a deputy. And the deputy is kind of like a simplified hunter that will help you as a solo player. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on the deputy. But when you set up your hunter, you will take your hunter board here and you will slot it into your dashboard. And the dashboard has spaces for all of your basic actions. So you have a move action, a sprint action, a tactic action, a cleanse action, and an assist action. The assist action allows you to place a die there, and then you pass your chip to another hunter, and they can do what that die tells them to do. So you can help other hunters on their turn. The move action allows you to move a number of hexes based on your movement. The sprint action needs one of these symbols there, and you can move a number of hexes based on your movement plus 1. The tactic action has a blank action, so you can use any die. You can use any die for a move as well. And to do a tactic action, you actually take a little tactics token, and I don't have any on the board right now, but you take a token and you place it there, and then you can spend that token on another turn to re-roll any of your dice. And then you can also take a cleanse action, And here you will put all of your statuses, and there are a lot of different statuses in this game, and they are all nasty. We have statuses such as burn, stun, weak, and vulnerable. And to cleanse, you can spend an action in order to get rid of some of those statuses. There's also a status called hunger, which is very deadly, and that cannot be cleansed, and that actually forces you to attack other players. So one of the themes of this game is corruption. And there's actually a corruption deck that we'll talk about in a bit. But as the gunslingers or the hunters aren't just fighting bosses and minions and the elite minions. They are fighting the corruption that is taking over this land. And they kind of have to be worried about becoming corrupt while they are playing. And so I think that's a pretty cool system. And it is a nice kind of marriage between mechanisms and theme. So when you first pick your character, the first choice you will have to make is their starting gear. And their starting gear will give them their initial dice pool. This game uses a dice pool system where you will build a pool of die depending on your level and depending on which items you have. You will roll those dice and then you will spend those symbols to do any of the attacks or actions that you have available to you. So we have two different types of items. We have armor and starting weapons. And again, think Bloodborne. What are the gunslinger starting weapons? We have a flintlock pistol, a blunderbuss, and a long rifle. All three of those are weapons in Bloodborne sidearms. And then the gunslinger, their starting armor is a strap armor, advanced leather armor, or scout armor. So for my setup here at this game, I have chosen the advanced leather armor and the flintlock pistol. And so you look at those items and you look at the dice here, and that tells me that I start with 2 defense die in my pool. I start with 1 attack die, and I believe this purple is a magic die. And each of those items also has a certain number of spots on it that you can also slot in dice to take actions. So I could slot this shield die there in to gain 2 shields. I would add a number of shield tokens to my shield slot, and these can be spent to prevent incoming damage. Here I can slot a sword icon in there, and that will allow me to do damage. Here I could slot this in there to match that symbol, and that will allow me to do damage. So as you gain in power, you will gain more items and more abilities, and those items and abilities will grant you more passive and active actions that you can take on your turn. Now, the gunslinger also has a special action here where I can slot any die in, and I can add a bullet I can load a bullet into my gun, basically a special kind of bullet. And I can load more bullets in as the game goes on, and then whenever I deal damage, I can choose to spin these bullets to do extra damage. Each of the hunters will have a certain rating for their movement and health, and as you take health, as your health goes down to 0, you will then become, you'll have a critical wound token that you add to your player board, and then you have to have an encounter with a certain secret card, and then you will be able to continue to play the game. If you ever go down to 0 health after you've already been critically wounded, that is game over. And if one of the hunters dies, then all of the hunters lose, and that's how you lose the game. Now, as you gain lament, as you gain experience, out on the board there will be some experience, and you can walk over it. You can end your action. You can end your movement turn on a space with experience, and you can grab it and add it to your player board. As you defeat minions, you will gain a point of experience, a point of lament. As you deal damage, or as you kill the elite minions, the heroes, the hunters will gain a certain number of lament. And as you do damage to certain parts of the boss body and their attacks, each one of the boss's attack cards, and we'll take a closer look at the boss board in a minute, also has a number of experience points that you gain when you defeat that boss, part, that body part. And at the beginning of your turn, you can choose to slot in any number of your lament cubes into your corruption track. And as you cover up these little unlock symbols, then you get a chance to level up. And when you level up, you go to your Hunter's Evolution deck. And this Evolution deck contains a whole bunch of new things. Tactical shots, emergency firearm, soft points, ballistic runes, a bullet with your name on it, the woodcutter, run and gun, boom, headshot, full metal jacket. And so these will add a whole bunch of new actions and passive abilities that you will have available to you for the rest of the game. And any of the lament that you decide not to slot in gets discarded. And you do want to think about how you are powering up your character, because as you slot in more lament, you will be unlocking more abilities. You will eventually unlock your heated up stage where you become the corrupted version of your hunter. But if you get up too high, you will have to start dealing with the bad things in this corruption deck. Because at the beginning of each one of the hunter's turns, they're going to draw one of these cards and they will compare the corruption to their corruption level. So from 2 to 7, lose 2 corruption or heal 2, then gain 1 hunger. So you can lose these. Now, as you lose these, you don't lose any of the abilities that you have unlocked. You just remove these from your corruption track, and that prevents you from going up further. From 8 to 16, move 2 spaces towards the closest minion. Then if there is a minion in range 0 to 1, discard it and gain 1 corruption. Or 17 to 20, gain 2 hunger and 2 burn. So as you get closer to 20, the things start becoming really bad. Deal 5 damage to each ally in a range of 0 to 1. Move 2 spaces towards the closest ally, then deal 4 to each ally in range 0 to 1. Yeah, these things get really nasty. So I do like that this kind of give and take, this tug of war between powering up and worrying about corruption and trying to keep your corruption in check. I think that's a really, really cool system. And it creates a choice that the players will have to make. You know, do you want to push forward and become more powerful quicker? But you might have to deal with more corrupted effects as you get later into the game. And that's a neat choice. I do really like that. Now, each of the hunters also has what's called a deputy deck. And the deputy deck is the evolution deck, is the level up deck that you will use when you're playing that hunter as an assist character for a solo play. And so just like the normal evolution deck, just like the normal level up deck, when an AI character, when your assist character, when they gain a certain number of lament and corruption, then you can choose to level up that character using their deputy deck. Now, another choice that you have when you level up is when you unlock one of these abilities, you get to choose 2 of these cards, and you can choose one and discard the other. So there are some character builds, or you can choose to add any of the action dice to your dice pool. So you can either grow your dice pool, or you can grow your access to new active and passive abilities. So there are a lot of choices to be made and a lot of interesting choices to be made on the character level. And I think that makes this game pretty cool on a character level. Okay, now let's go over to the boss board and take a look at that. Okay, so here's kind of a weird angle of the boss board. Getting this game to fit on my small table is doable, but I did kind of have to turn things in awkward positions. But here you will have your boss board, and the boss board is kind of like the hero board. This controls what the boss is doing. And so each of the bosses will come with their own little their boss board here that'll tell you the convergence. And then there is a turn tracker that different things will happen at the beginning of each boss turn. And you start there, and then you will move into an event. You will activate tornadoes. You will spawn minions, and then a new stage. So there are different stages of the boss. Kind of think of these as multi-stage boss fights in a From Software game. And here in the prototype, the Convergence boss has 3 different stages. And these are shuffled up at the beginning of the game, and then you will draw those, and then those will change the overall abilities, the overall tactics, the overall AI of the boss at each one of those stages. Now, what's really cool is this game comes with some little tokens to keep track of the different events, of the different steps for each of the enemy turns. On step 1, you will draw or you will encounter an event. On step 2, you will trigger whatever minions are out on the board. On step 3, you will trigger your elite enemy. On step 4, you will trigger the boss's attack. Now, the boss's attack, you will have their action this turn, and you will also know what they are going to do on the next turn. So there is an element of learning the boss, of learning their movements, and adapting to what they are going to do now and what they are going to do later. On your boss attack deck, you will build your boss attack deck depending on the scenario and the boss that you are playing. And so these are all of the attacks available to that boss with a final action. And so if this card is visible, take all the boss attack cards from the discard, reshuffle them and place them here. If there are no boss attack cards in the discard, draw and resolve this card. So this is kind of like an ultimate ability that the boss will be able to unlock. Now, each one of these boss attack cards will have a certain body part that you are targeting. It will have a number of health and a number of lament, a number of experience points that all of the hunters gain when they defeat that body part. When you defeat that body part, this card is removed from the boss's attack deck. So you will never have to encounter the cyclonic spear again unless there are multiple copies of that card. So that's pretty cool too. But keep in mind that these will be moving through. And so you have to kind of focus your attack on a certain body part in order to destroy it. I think that's a really neat concept. Now, on this turn, on the final track of the boss attack track there, if you do damage to this, so if I was able to do 7 damage to this body part here. The convergence doesn't really have a lot of different body parts. Basically just its body and its head, kind of. But I could discard that, and then below that card is a reaction card. And so the boss would react when that body part gets destroyed. Again, super cool, very dynamic. The boss does move around quite a bit, and the characters will be moving around in response. Now, the event deck will be built according to the scenario. So you will have a number of different events that will correspond to the boss and to a map event and to core events. And so you will mix all of those together. And then when the timer gets on new event, you will draw one of those. And then at the start of the boss phase, you will have to encounter those various events. So there is quite a bit of variety in the setup and how you set up your boss, how you set up your heroes, and how you set up your map. And let's take a look at the map now. So it's a pretty cool hex map, and you will have different tiles, and the scenario will tell you to build the tiles a certain way or to build the map a certain way. You have these red spots here, and these are considered blocking spots. And so these are terrain that you place on the blocking spots, and that just kind of blocks line of sight. Line of sight is pretty simple. You go from the center to center, and if you don't pass a blocking site or a blocking tile and you don't go off the edge of the map, like for instance, you can't target from here to here, then you are in line of sight. And most of the movement is relatively simple. You can move from one hex to another for 1 point of movement. These red spaces here are where experience points will spawn sometimes, so you can move into those and pick them up. The scenario will have you set up different treasure tokens, so you can move on to treasure tokens and pick those up. And there are a large stack of treasure tokens, and these will allow you to do certain things, such as this one. You can heal 4. Each hunter gains an experience, and each hunter gains 2 defense. Hey, that is a really cool treasure there. I like that a lot. And there are also different things that change depending on the setup with these modular events. And we'll talk a little bit more about those in detail, because that is one of my favorite things about this game and one of the things that I'm most interested in. But the boss will often move around. They will teleport around. They will move towards the hero or the hunter with the most lament, with the most corruption. They will move towards the hunter with the least amount of health. Sometimes they will teleport from these lament spots and then move on to the heroes. or move on to the hunters. And so there is a lot of movement, and the movement is pretty dynamic in this game. You won't just be moving into the center and then having a big battle. You will be moving around. And one of the ways that the hunters can move around quickly is through these portals. So there are these spaces on the maps that have these portal tokens, and you will set up a standee, or there are also these minis here. I actually prefer the standees because I think the art is cooler and it just matches the board a little more. But these spots can be moved to and from as they are adjacent. So you can move to these portals. You can move through the portals in order to move quickly. Over here, for instance, over here, my Technomancer is actually engaged with the boss. And so here I have my Gunslinger. And my Gunslinger is next to a portal, so they could actually move through that portal to this portal down here in order to engage the boss and help out the Technomancer. And so at the beginning of the game, you will also be told that you can place some of these portals in the spots that you choose. And so you really want to think carefully about how those portals are laid out so you can quickly traverse the map and get to where the action is. Because like I said, things move around quite a bit on this board. And so, yeah, so that's basically it. Each turn, the hunters will roll their pool of dice. They will assign those dice to take certain actions. And the basic actions: move, sprint, tactics, cleanse, assist, and then whatever actions they have available on their items or their various level up cards. And you are trying to defeat the elite minion. You are trying to defeat the minions. You're trying to get experience points to level up. And ultimately, you're trying to defeat the boss, and you're trying to do all of that before one of the hunters basically dies twice. And at that point, it would be game over. Okay, so now let's go through, I think I have about 8 points, and some of those are criticisms and some of those are praises. We're going to start with the good stuff, and let's start with one of my favorite things about this game, and that is these cards here. These, not the events, but the map, the environment cards. So when you set up your map according to the scenario will have different slots on the map that correspond to different environment cards. There might be 3 map slots, or 3 token slots, or 3 tile slots, things like that. And those all correspond to different environment cards. And you will pick a number of these depending on the scenario. So each one of these is a completely different thing that changes the map. And I think this is really neat because it adds an element of variety. So you can play the same scenario many times and have different little things that happen. For instance, I drew this carriage. So setup, place this carriage token in the first available token slot. And so the setup will tell you the various token slots. And then you take the mini here, or the standee. There's also a standee of the carriage, and you place that there. Now, I can move into this carriage for an action. If I took a movement action, I can move to this carriage. And then this says here that I could discard a die that had the attack symbol on there. So as an action, I could use this die from my dice pool to have an encounter with this carriage. And this says to open the carriage, so you have to kind of attack it or pry open the door. Draw and resolve secret card number 32. Now there is a deck of secret cards here, and these are various things that happen during the game. So if you wanted to interact with that carriage, you would turn to secret card 32 and turn this over, and you find an impeccably dressed noblewoman asking for your help. Attach this card to a space with the portal furthest from you. Discard the carriage enviro card, draw and resolve secret card 30, and place it near the carriage token. So now you have a side quest. You can escort the carriage. When the carriage token reaches the space with this card attached to it, the secret card 30 and the discard this card, secret card 30, and the carriage token. Then draw and resolve secret card 35. So any of the environmental cards that have this symbol down here at the bottom, those actually get slotted into the map spots themselves. And so I could slot this into a spot with a portal. So if we go up here, here's a portal. I would just slide this in under the hex of the portal. And then that becomes the destination portal for this particular side quest. And so this says to look also at secret card 35 here. And so the noblewoman gives you a reward. Each hunter heals 5, gains 1 chosen die, and loses 2 corruption if available. And so you would get that if you solve that particular side quest. I think that is really cool. That adds a really neat kind of random element to this game, and it's completely variable, and you never know if you're going to have the carriage from one game to the next. Another one of the environment cards that I had this game is a well. Place the well token or the well standee on that spot there, and then I can go to that well and I can discard either a double sword icon or 2 dice with that icon. And then I can roll this die to engage with the well. And so if I rolled that symbol there, I would gain 1 lament, so 1 experience points, and 2 hunger. You may discard the well token and this card to gain 2 and 4 hunger instead. Or you can draw and resolve secret card number 39. Now, unfortunately, in this prototype, I don't have secret card 39, so I'm really wondering what happens. Maybe some kind of weird creature comes out of the well or something. I don't know, but again, I really like this a lot. Another one of the environmental cards I have here is the pile of skulls. You can place this pile of skulls in the first available token slot, and hunters can attack the pile of skulls. And when the token has 10 or more damage on it, discard this, and each hunter gains 3 lament, so 3 experience points. So this becomes kind of an experience point punching bag that you can attack in order to gain some experience points. And there are all kinds of different environments. I think one of the really cool ones is this witch hut here. And if you draw this card, then you actually add a new tile to whatever map you are playing on. And this will allow you to interact with this witch. And so here you can discard any die there in order to resolve secret card number 10. And you can do the same thing to resolve secret card number 11. So there are different random elements that will happen throughout the game, and that is super cool. And then here we have things like busy minions. Maybe some of the river spaces will be more dangerous. A corrupted river, corrupted lands, a rushing river, twisted lands, holy grounds. So I'm hoping that there are a whole bunch of these to encounter. Now, one thing that I am a little bit weary of, and hopefully they have thought about this, is being punished for engaging with this part of the game. These kinds of things in these kinds of games are my favorite thing to do. Kind of having these random encounters, rolling dice, looking up on charts, drawing cards that have side quests. And I'm hoping that there are enough opportunities to do that without feeling like you are wasting your turn. Because often in these kinds of games, when you engage with these things that are optional, it often feels like you are wasting your turn, because really you should be attacking the boss, you should be attacking the elite, you should be attacking the minions. So I'm hoping there is enough leeway. I'm hoping there are enough enough opportunities to do that without feeling like I am wasting my turn. And if there is, then I think that is pretty cool. Another thing that I like about this game is that it is one and done. It's 0 to hero. You set up a game, you play, and that's it. You don't have to keep track of things going forward. You don't have to keep track of a character build from one game to the next. You just play different scenarios. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting that as you play scenarios, you will be unlocking other scenarios to play. So it sounds like I said at the beginning that there is maybe a little bit of a light legacy element to this game. And to me, that is pretty interesting. There's going to be at least 22 scenarios. I think there's going to be more. I think I read something like 24 scenarios. And I'm hoping that that they unlock in interesting ways and in ways that don't create a significant amount of bookkeeping from one scenario to the next. But the fact that this was not a campaign game was something that I was interested in and something that made me want to take a look at this prototype. Another thing I like is the modular setup, and that includes these. That includes the different types of boss cards and the different types of event cards. There are a lot of things that go into each scenario that you will be able to play that scenario multiple times to have different types of experiences. And so that is another kind of important element in these kinds of games. I also do really like the dice pool system. You guys know, longtime viewers of the Dungeon Dive know that I'm a big fan of dice pools, and I also like when you get to roll your dice and then spend those dice for certain actions. I like spending dice to take actions because it satisfies two things for me. One, the randomness. I like a lot of randomness in my games, and so you don't always know exactly what actions you can take from turn to turn. So it's not predetermined. It's not a deterministic action system, but you have a lot of options on how you spend your dice. As you level up, you can choose to add other dice to your dice pool to kind of change up your character. Let's say you wanted to focus more on a tanky character, and so you might want to add more defense dice to your dice pool, or maybe you want to add more attack dice, more magic dice, more assist dice. And so there are ways to build your character, not just in terms of your dice pool, but also in how your character evolves with this evolution deck. And having that choice of picking between one of the two powers you draw or expanding your dice pool creates for some really interesting elements and some things that will make one game feel different from each other game. The other thing I like is how the boss attacks work and how you can target attacks. You can target attack cards like you were targeting a certain body part. And if you do enough damage, you can remove those attacks from the boss's arsenal. That is a great idea. And that is somewhat similar to something like Kingdom Death Monster. And so here we have the body of the undead general, maybe their legs or their torso, their arms, their legs, torso, head. So all kinds of different things that you will be able to attack. And you can you can focus on those body parts to take out those attacks that are giving your hunters a lot of trouble. I think that is a really interesting concept. I hope that the balance of the health is thoughtful so that it feels like you have enough time to do the damage before that card falls off the boss attack track. I also like how each of the bosses will have their own ways of responding to those attacks. When you do finally destroy one of their body parts, they will do something in response. And I also like that there are different final actions that will trigger as you move through the boss's deck of cards. And then we also have those various boss stages. And so you will shuffle this deck up at the beginning of the game, and you will draw one of those to really change things up. So a lot of the things that I really do like, add variety, add different elements to where you can play the same scenario multiple times and have different experiences. There are some things that I'm a little weary about though. And again, that was hopefully I feel like I have enough time throughout an entire game to engage with the various things on the map. And I also think there is a little bit of a lack of flavor text. And by that, I mean, when you take a look at the events, this just says hurtful desire, lament spread, unnatural gift, thunderstorm, burning winds, lunar eclipse. I would like just a couple sentences of flavor text there to give these different environments a little bit more of just a little bit more of a story, a little bit more insight into what is actually happening. You know, what is the hurtful desire? Why is the lament spreading? It doesn't have to be a lot. I'm not asking for a full paragraph or anything like that, but just a little bit of a description, of a narrative description added to the events to add a little bit of flavor to the game for those who want to engage the game in that way. The same with the corruption, maybe a title for the corruption, and just a little thing that is happening to your character. And maybe some of that will be more on the secret cards. And so I would also like a little bit more flavor text on the secret cards. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of flavor text. I think flavor text is a thing that can really elevate a game from being A tier into S tier. Good flavor text can really help sell the experience at the table. So also, as you guys can see, there is a lot going on in this game. There are a lot of tokens here. We have a lot of different statuses and different things to keep track of. There are different dice, there are different cards, there are different tiles, there are all kinds of different decks of cards. So like a lot of Awaken Realms games, this game can be pretty fiddly. There is a lot going on. There's a lot to keep track of. In the couple of games that I played, I did find myself forgetting quite a bit. For me, I think this game is a difficult game to play solo just because there are so many things happening. For me, this is a game that I would want to play with a group where you could kind of divvy out the responsibility. For example, you could have one player be in control of the minions. You could have another player be in control of the elites. You could have one player control the boss. You could have players keep track of certain jobs. And I think that is an important part about this game because there is a heck of a lot going on. And one other slight criticism I have is whenever there are games that have these kinds of steps in enemy AI, it always just feels a little bit fiddly and it always takes a little bit longer than I would like. So I'm hoping that these AI steps, I'm hoping that one, they are written very concisely and it's very clear what you do and what you don't do. So you don't have to sit around the table and think, well, this situation here is kind of right. This situation here is kind of right. Which one is more right? I like when these elements on enemy AI cards are very, very concise and very detailed. I felt like the enemy AI in Madara, for me, felt a little fiddly, and there were a whole bunch of times that we really weren't sure what we should be doing while we were playing. I think the same can be said about Shadows of Brimstone. And so I just hope that is well written, and I hope it's concise to where it doesn't cause a lot of confusion or a lot of slowdown from one turn to the next. But overall, I think there are a lot of positive things to be said about this prototype. It seems pretty exciting. And I know it kind of looks messy all set up, but I do have a lot of stuff out on my table right now just to show that you won't need on your table while you are playing. And actually, this game does fit pretty well on my small 3x4 table. So I guess the question is, will I be backing it? Will the Dungeon Dive be backing it? And I don't know yet. I would want to see price point. I would want to see how much stuff is going to be included. I don't have a lot of space for any more big games. I have a few big games coming and I have to make space for them. I need to do another big purge. And I just don't have a lot of space in my smaller house to store a lot of big games. So I'm hoping that there is a pledge that just comes with a small number of things. I'm hoping that there's not a lot of mini bloat. One thing that I do like to see are these standees for the portals and for the cart there. And I'm wondering if they are going to do a full standee version. If they do a full standee version, that will push me closer to wanting to back it because games with standees often come in smaller boxes and they don't take as much space to store. However, I also know that one thing that people really do like about Awaken Realms games are those that kind of overproduction, that ornate production. And these things are crazy. People who like minis are really going to like these. It looks like you will probably have the option to get these unpainted or with this shaded quality already applied to them. Possibly, I don't know, maybe this is just for the prototype, but I doubt it. I'm sure they will offer this kind of option. I think they call that a sun drop option or something like that. And so if there's enough variety in a base game, if the box is a good size that I can store, and if the price is right, and I don't have to worry about a whole bunch of boxes to mix and match and get rid of, and I don't have to worry about a fancy way to store minis and to keep them protected, then I might back it. I do like the fact that it's not campaign. I love the theme. Bloodborne is one of my favorite board games of all time, and I think this is for me a little bit more interesting than the Simon Bloodborne game. Possibly, it doesn't quite feel as I like the dice. I really like dice in games, and so I like seeing these dice. It doesn't feel quite as thinky as the Simon Bloodborne game. I do like boss battlers. I think those are pretty cool, and I know that it's kind of a growing subgenre of thematic tabletop games, and so it's neat to see another entry into this series. So I guess just right now, I'm kind of on a wait and see. I'm not so excited that I'm like, yes, day one, back it, get whatever early bird specials, whatever, whatever any of that nonsense is. I'm not feeling that right now, but I am feeling more excited than I was before I got everything on the table. And yeah, so I'm just kind of in a wait and see pattern. Hopefully, I presented enough information to you in this video where you can make your own decision on whether or not to back this game. And just remember, just be smart about it. A lot of times these games come out, games like this, and people go all in, and it's 10 boxes, and you get so much stuff, and nobody ends up playing 80% of the stuff they bought. And so I hardly ever recommend going all in, even if it's a game that you really love, because we have so many games, we have so many options, we have so many things competing for our time and money these days. And so, yeah, just be smart about what you back and how you spend your money. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this look at the prototype version of Grimcoven. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.